Imagine, if you will, the vast, sweeping expanse of human history stretching out right in front of you. Picture a deep, epic orchestral score building slowly in the background as humanity rises from the dust to forge our modern world. Today, we're going on a massive cinematic journey from the very first cities ever built straight to the dawn of our interconnected civilization. And it all starts with a rather bizarre question. Why on earth is our modern alphabet carved into a 3,500-year-old lice comb? Okay, let's dive right into this bizarre mystery. The artifact we're talking about is an incredibly ancient 3,500-year-old lice comb. But it's not just some relic of ancient personal hygiene. Carved directly into this comb is our modern alphabet. How is that even possible? Why would the foundational building blocks of the exact words I'm speaking to you right now, the letters we literally use to build civilizations and write our laws, be etched into an everyday grooming tool from millennia ago? Well, answering that question means we have to take an epic, sometimes bloody, and absolutely fascinating historical journey. And as we explore the ancient world to solve the mystery of that comb, we're going to encounter some truly unbelievable stories. The sheer breadth of world history we're covering is staggering. Soon, you'll meet a brilliant philosopher who literally measured the circumference of the Earth over 2,000 years ago using nothing but his mind in the shadows of the sun. Wild, right? And on the much darker side of human ambition, you'll find out why a certain historical warlord actually killed more people than Hitler. The absolute contrast between human brilliance and pure brutality in this era is just astounding. But before we get to these titans of history, we got to step back. We need to go back to the exact place where civilization actually began. Part 1. The First Cities and Empires. Our journey officially kicks off in a vibrant, ancient landscape. Imagine standing right between two mighty rivers in Iraq. This is Mesopotamia, the place where humans built the world's very first civilizations. And they didn't just build homes, they built monumental structures that totally defied the sky. Right in the middle of these ancient cities, they constructed towering pyramid-shaped step towers called ziggurats. Just picture these massive stone structures lit by flickering torches in the pitch black of night, with ancient priests performing mysterious rituals under a canopy of stars. It was a world entirely unlike ours, yet it laid the foundation for everything we know. The ancient Sumerians who lived here were absolute visionaries. In fact, every single time you look at a clock, you're interacting directly with Sumerian technology. They're the ones who divided the day into hours, the hours into minutes, and the minutes into seconds. They literally organized the human experience of time itself. And as if that wasn't enough, they fundamentally invented writing. They figured out how to capture spoken language, the fleeting sound of a voice, and make it physical. But human nature being what it is, peaceful inventions soon collided with the brutal reality of ambition. A king named Sargon had a very aggressive idea. Think of a heavy, powerful, relentless military march echoing across the desert. That's the rhythm of Sargon's reign. He didn't just want to rule his own city, he violently conquered the neighboring cities around him. He marched his armies across the sands, bringing independent city-states under his singular control through sheer overwhelming force. By doing this, Sargon forged the world's very first empire. The historical gravity of this moment, it absolutely cannot be overstated. The very concept of empire, of conquering and assimilating your neighbors, was born right here. Let's pan out a bit and see how this builds, because Sargon wasn't operating in a vacuum. There was a simultaneous explosion of ancient cultures all across the globe. Around the exact same time Sargon was violently forging his Mesopotamian empire, the Egyptians were hauling massive stones across the sand to build the iconic pyramids. Across the sea, the Minoans were painting incredibly elaborate, colorful pictures of bulls and dolphins. And over in the Indus River Valley, an entirely different group of people were constructing highly organized cities. These weren't haphazard camps. They had perfectly straight roads and advanced drainage systems that wouldn't be seen again for centuries. The known world was suddenly vibrantly alive with monumental human achievement, all happening at the exact same time. Part 2. Laws and Unsolved Mysteries. Let's slow things down for a moment, because with this sudden rise in complex civilization comes a wave of profound, slowly unraveling enigmas. We're entering an era of deep, unsolved mysteries. Over in that highly organized Indus River Valley we just mentioned, the people wrote stuff down. They carved their writing into ancient, intricate seals featuring animals and symbols. They clearly had a highly structured society and a clear system of communication. Yet, here's the crazy part. Despite having all the modern technology, supercomputers, and linguistic expertise in the world today, absolutely no one on Earth knows how to read this unbreakable script. The voices, stories, and laws of an entire advanced civilization are locked in these stones, completely silent to us. I want to linger on this massive number for a second. $1 million. A specific individual has literally offered a $1 million reward to anyone out there who can finally decipher this mysterious Indus script. Just think about that. If you can crack the ancient code that has completely baffled the greatest historians, archaeologists, and linguists alive today, that $1 million is yours. It really just goes to show how utterly desperate we are to understand the lost chapters of our own human story and how much of our past remains completely obscured in shadow. Shifting our focus back over to the bustling cities of Mesopotamia, we find a very different kind of carved stone. And this is one that we absolutely can read. This is Hammurabi's stele. Imagine a dramatic, towering monolith of black diorite rock, inscribed with incredibly intricate ancient cuneiform laws. A powerful king named Hammurabi decided that his rules shouldn't just be spoken words that fade with the wind, they needed to be absolute and permanent. So he literally carved his laws into this rock. He did this long before many other ancient cultures even appeared on the historical stage. Hammurabi cemented his legacy in stone, ensuring his entire empire operated under a unified, unbreakable legal code covering everything from theft to commerce to family disputes. From there, the historical map just keeps populating. We witness the rapid expansion of diverse new cultures and countless new ancient empires emerging all over the place, stretching right across continents. And here's where history starts to feel surprisingly close to home. Among all these new cultures popping up in this chaotic, rapidly expanding ancient world, some of them actually began speaking languages directly related to modern English. The very root words, the fundamental linguistic structures we use today to communicate, were just beginning to take root in the soil of this vibrant era. Part 3. The Great Bronze Collapse. Just as these massive, seemingly invincible empires reached their absolute peak of power and wealth, a terrifying tension began to sweep across the known world. For some mysterious reason that historians still fiercely debate today, all of these established Bronze Age empires started falling apart, and it happened almost exactly at the same time. It was a systemic, simultaneous crumbling of the entire world order. Cities burned, trade routes vanished, and populations scattered. And this catastrophic collapse coincided perfectly with a sharp technological shift. Bronze was suddenly going out of fashion. The world was violently changing, and the unstoppable cutting-edge technology of the Iron Age had arrived to replace the old world order forever. Part 4. The Israelite Journey. Out of the smoking ashes of those collapsing empires, new cultural and historical narratives began to forge their own distinct paths. Tracing a very specific historical lineage, we find a profound story of a people. It starts with a man named Abraham. Now, Abraham had a son, and that son is recognized as the ancestor of the Arabs of Central Arabia. But Abraham also had another son, and that son had another son, and that specific son eventually had 12 sons. Those 12 sons became the foundation of the people known as the Israelites. It's a direct, multi-generational mapping of a family tree that would go on to shape huge, fundamental portions of world history. The historical narrative of the Israelites then takes a dark and deeply tragic turn. This growing group of people journeyed down into Egypt, and while they were there, the bitter, crushing reality of history set in. They became slaves. It's a profound historical narrative of a people losing their freedom, stripped of their autonomy, and suffering deeply under the immense weight of an Egyptian empire that was brutally utilizing human labor to build its own everlasting legacy. But the story doesn't end in the chains of slavery. A figure named Moses stepped up to fiercely challenge their enslavement. He essentially declared that this slavery was not going to stand. What followed is the epic historical text known as the Exodus. They made a massive, desperate departure, leaving the might of Egypt behind entirely. Their journey led them deep into the harsh wilderness, to a mysterious mountain. It was there, amidst the smoke and the stone, according to the text, that their God gave them the 10 Commandments, a brand new, foundational moral and legal code for their newly freed people. Reinvigorated and unified by this mountain encounter, they moved forward, eventually entering new lands and conquering some of the Canaanites who lived there. As time rapidly passed, this unified group organized into a formidable kingdom of their own. Pushing the pace of history forward, a fiercely ambitious king named David took power. David was aggressively expansionist. He launched massive, sweeping military campaigns and, honestly, he conquered almost everybody in the surrounding region. He rapidly pushed his borders outward, crushing opposition and establishing a dominant, undeniable force in the area. But there was one highly notable exception to King David's aggressive conquest. Part 5. The Phoenician Network. King David conquered almost everybody on land except for the Phoenicians. Moving with a fast, triumphant energy, the Phoenicians remained entirely unconquered. Instead of focusing heavily on massive land armies and desert conquests, they looked to the ocean. They were master shipbuilders. They built vast fleets of cutting-edge ships and sailed absolutely everywhere across the known world, dominating the Mediterranean. By mastering the oceans and establishing lucrative trade routes, they built vast, interconnected cities that thrived on immense wealth. But perhaps their greatest, most lasting achievement wasn't their incredible ships or their wealthy cities. It was how they communicated. They wrote stuff down using a really cool, entirely revolutionary phonetic alphabet. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what made their writing so revolutionary. Think about how the ancient Canaanite script from over 3,500 years ago essentially transforms. The Phoenicians utilized and spread an early version of this very alphabet. Letter by letter, these ancient symbols correspond directly to the modern English alphabet equivalent. The first letter is A, the second is B, the third is C. This isn't just a random set of shapes. This is the direct evolutionary ancestor of the alphabet that we read and write with every single day. They stripped away the thousands of complex cuneiform symbols and replaced them with a simple, brilliant phonetic system. Which brings this entire explainer full circle, right back to where we started. Remember that 3,500-year-old lice comb? The Canaanite alphabet carved directly onto it proves that this writing system was an absolutely flawless viral idea. It was such a staggeringly good, highly efficient idea to write this way that absolutely everyone in the ancient world copied it. The letters etched into this tiny, everyday grooming tool survived the violent rise and fall of empires, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in all of history isn't a conquering army or a walled city, but a totally brilliant copycat idea that anyone can learn. But don't think for a second that the story ends here. With the unstoppable viral spread of this new alphabet and the catastrophic simultaneous crumbling of the old Bronze Age empires, humanity was standing at the edge of a massive precipice. The world was on the brink, the stage has been perfectly set, the old powers have fallen apart, and the tools for recording complex thoughts are now in the hands of everyday people. This is just the beginning, because a totally wild new age of fierce warriors, groundbreaking philosophers, and new gods is about to violently erupt across the known world. But as these ancient empires turn to dust, what kind of modern world will this revolutionary alphabet ultimately build?
We're looking at an absolutely massive, breathtaking chapter of human history. We're going to trace this grand, sweeping pendulum swing across the ancient world. You see, on one side of this swing, we have explosive, bloody, external conquests that completely reshaped borders, toppled ancient dynasties, and literally redrew the maps of the world almost overnight. And then, on the exact opposite side of that very same pendulum, we have an era of quiet, profound, internal enlightenment that actually reshapes the human mind forever. It's a wild, totally unpredictable ride of extreme contrasts. We're going from the sheer brutality of chariot warfare all the way to the serenity of philosophers just sitting quietly under trees. The sheer scale of what we're about to witness today is absolutely staggering, so let's just jump right in.
To truly understand this era, we really have to start in the absolute meat grinder of the ancient Near East. Just think about the chaotic clash happening at this time. The Assyrians are back on the historical scene, and they've completely transformed into this unstoppable, terrifying military machine. Using advanced siege tactics and iron weapons, they've just conquered everyone, everywhere, and I mean literally everywhere, sweeping right across Mesopotamia and Egypt. Well, with one glaring, stubborn exception, which is the small city of Jerusalem, which miraculously manages to hold out. But, empire building is a chaotic, brutal business. Just as the Assyrians are standing on top of the world, flexing their ultimate, uncontested power, the pendulum violently swings. Out of absolutely nowhere, the Babylonians rise up in a massive rebellion, they totally turn the tables, and they completely crush the Assyrian capital. Within a blink of a historical eye, the ultimate hunters instantly become the hunted, and the Babylonians claim the crown of the Near East.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because just as the Babylonians think they've permanently won the ultimate prize, a completely new player enters the board, and he changes the game entirely. Enter Cyrus the Great. Imagine the sheer scale of sweeping maps unfolding right in front of you. The arrows of his Persian armies are just pushing outward in every single direction, expanding at a genuinely terrifying pace. It's an epic, massive expansion that leaves all the neighboring kingdoms entirely in shock. Cyrus doesn't just win a few skirmishes or, take a few border towns. He systematically conquers the powerful Medes, then he entirely swallows up the mighty Babylonian Empire, and then he just rolls right over the wealthy Lydians in Asia Minor. Through brilliant military strategy and surprisingly tolerant diplomacy, he's stitching together this colossal new empire at a speed and a scale that the world has literally never seen before.
Section 1. The Age of Eastern Sages.
But history isn't just about the clash of swords and the marching of armies. As we travel far east, away from the bloody battlefields and burning cities of the Near East, we enter an entirely different world. A quiet revolution is happening in the area the Greeks called Indice. Follow Siddhartha Gautama's remarkable journey with me. Step 1, we start with a young prince living a life of absolute sheltered opulence inside a palace, completely shielded from the outside world. But then, step 2, reality just shatters his perfect little bubble. Stepping outside, he sees sickness, aging, and death for the very first time. He realizes that suffering is the universal human condition. Desperate to find an escape from this suffering, step 3, he takes extreme action. He abandons his wealth, becomes an ascetic monk, and quite literally almost starves himself to death in the forest. But the profound realization comes in step 4. He realizes extreme deprivation isn't the answer either. He decides to embrace what's called a middle way and simply eat a nourishing, nice meal. And then, step 5, sitting quietly and deeply meditating under a Bodhi tree, perfectly balanced, he achieves enlightenment. He becomes the Buddha, triggering a total transformation of the human mind that will eventually go on to influence billions.
And if you want a completely different philosophical flavor, let's look even further east to China. Here we have a beautiful contrast between two of the most profound thinkers tackling the human experience at the exact same time in history. First up, we have Confucius. His philosophy is highly structured and deeply practical for society navigating chaos. He teaches people to be fiercely loyal to their families, to ensure their leaders rule with absolute moral integrity, and ultimately to just be less confused about their rigid roles in society. It's all about establishing harmony through order and duty. And then, offering the exact opposite approach, we have the legendary Laozi with Taoism. His teachings can be summed up perfectly like this: just go with the flow. Yield to the natural, effortless order of the universe, the Tao. Don't force things. You gotta be like water that gently carves through rock over time. Two entirely different but entirely brilliant ways to navigate the sheer complexity of life.
Section 2. Democracy and Persian Wars.
Now, take a deep breath, because we are executing a violent tonal shift right now. We're swinging the pendulum back to the west, back to the Mediterranean, where ideas and armies are about to collide in spectacular fashion. But before the impending bloodshed, we actually get the birth of something beautiful. Picture cinematic, sweeping shots of ancient stadiums, the absolute roar of the crowds, and the sheer physical perfection of classical Greek sculpture aesthetics being brought to life. The Greeks have organized the Olympics. It's a massive, highly competitive sporting event held every 4 years, drawing athletes from warring city-states, all coming together, entirely dedicated to honoring their chief god Zeus. It is a rare, fleeting moment of unified cultural glory in a deeply, deeply fractured landscape.
Now, what's really interesting about all of this is the incredibly brutal, fast-paced cause and effect of this defining clash of civilizations. Let's run through it. Step 1. The people of Athens do something absolutely revolutionary. They invent democracy. Citizens are actually voting and making decisions themselves. Amazing, right? Well, step 2. Unfortunately, supporting rebellions abroad in the name of liberty somehow makes the massive, autocratic Persian Empire incredibly mad. Step 3. The inevitable clash happens at the Bay of Marathon. The mighty Persians land, and against all odds, the heavily armored Athenian hoplites absolutely slaughter the invading forces in a dead sprint. It's an incredible, legendary victory. But step 4. An empire never forgets. A decade later, the Persian king Xerxes returns with an apocalyptic-sized army, and they completely burn the beautiful city of Athens to the ground. It's a breathless, totally devastating cycle of triumphant victory and absolute utter destruction.
Section 3. The Relay of Greek Greatness.
So, Athens is left in physical ashes. But you know the amazing thing about humanity? You cannot burn an idea. From the physical ruins of the Persian Wars rises an absolute towering monument of human thought, and it starts exactly here. Herodotus literally invents the writing of history. Think about that for a second. Before this exact moment, humanity relied on myths, oral legends, and scattered royal decrees to remember the past. Herodotus decides to actually investigate, to interview witnesses, and systematically write down the true events of the past. His groundbreaking work acts as the starting gun for an unprecedented, explosive era of Greek intellectual dominance. He essentially sets the stage for everything that follows.
Let's see how this builds, because this is the ultimate intellectual baton pass through time. Feel the momentous weight of ideas speeding up with every single passing generation here. First, we have Socrates, stubbornly standing in the marketplace, asking relentless, foundational questions about truth and justice. He teaches a brilliant young man named Plato. Plato takes those raw spoken ideas, founds an academy, writes down profound philosophies of reality, and in turn teaches a star student named Aristotle. Aristotle, arguably one of the greatest analytical minds to ever live, categorizes the natural world, writes on ethics and politics, and then takes all of this accumulated towering knowledge and travels north to teach it to a young Macedonian prince, a kid who will soon become known as Alexander the Great. It is a direct, unbroken pipeline of pure, concentrated greatness.
Section 4. Alexander and the Silent Fall.
And this brings us to the explosive culmination of this philosophical pipeline. What happens when you take the greatest intellectual foundation in the known world, hand it to a fiercely ambitious young man, and give him the ultimate military force? You get a violent explosion that forever changes the globe. Alexander the Great erupts out of Greece. He takes absolute devastating revenge on the Persians for burning Athens. He doesn't just defeat their massive armies, no, he pushes relentlessly eastward, conquering Egypt, flattening Babylon, and marching all the way to the borders of India. He conquers the entire known world. His power is so absolute, his victories so sweeping and completely undefeated that he eventually looks around at his colossal empire, drinks in his own glory, and literally declares to his followers that he is a living god.
Then he died. So the crucial point is, he probably wasn't actually a god.
And instantly, the dead silence of his passing is shattered by total, uncontrollable chaos. Who should rule the world now? Me! Scream every single one of Alexander's power-hungry generals. The reality of his death fractures his massive, unmanageable empire immediately. These highly trained commanders who once fought side by side instantly turn their swords on each other. They fight viciously in a series of brutal successor wars, and they unapologetically carve up the known world into bitterly divided pieces, ending the dream of a unified global empire forever.
Section 5. Fractured Worlds and Mad Kings.
This ushers in the final era of our explainer, the Hellenistic period. We're now looking at a deeply divided, fractured Greek world spread across multiple continents, and it's marked by the absolute strangest combination: towering, mind-bending scientific brilliance happening right alongside absolute, absurd tyranny. Let's start with the brilliance. This is the absolute mind-blown pivot of our story. Amidst all this fractured political chaos, a brilliant Greek polymath named Aristophanes, living down in the intellectual hub of Alexandria in Egypt, decides to look up at the sky, look down at the ground, and do the impossible. Sitting at a desk, he measures the entire planet.
And this brilliantly illustrates the breathtaking intellect of the era. I mean, he didn't have sophisticated satellites in orbit. He didn't have modern lasers or complex digital tracking arrays. He just noticed the changing angles of shadows cast in a well in Siena versus an obelisk in Alexandria. He used basic, foundational geometry, and with just those rudimentary tools in his immense brain, he successfully measured the circumference of the entire Earth with astonishing accuracy. It's a staggering, monumental achievement of human thought that still commands sheer awe today. The human mind was quite literally reaching out and grasping the cosmos. But while some Greeks were using brilliant geometry to measure the globe, other Greek rulers were, frankly, not quite so bright. Let's do a sharp tonal shift here into some dark historical comedy. Consider a Seleucid king named Antiochus IV Epiphanes. He surveys his portion of the fractured world, decides to declare himself the literal manifestation of the god Zeus, and then uses his supposed divine, terrifying authority to mandate what? Well, in a heavy-handed attempt to force Greek culture onto his subjects, he tries to force the Jewish people in Jerusalem to abandon their sacred laws and literally eat ham sandwiches. I mean, it perfectly highlights the utter, ridiculous absurdity of these regional tyrants who had just grown completely drunk on their own power. And the response to this mad king's absolute, godlike authority? Well, we can sum it up with the most deadpan, massive historical understatement you can possibly imagine. No thanks. But let's snap back to serious historical reality here, because they didn't just politely decline an invitation. The Jewish people utterly rejected the Mad King's edicts.
Under the leadership of the Maccabees, they launched a fierce, desperate guerrilla war against an overwhelming superpower. They fought back against the absurdity, the forced assimilation, and the absolute tyranny. And incredibly, against all mathematical odds, out of the chaos of this fractured Greek world, they successfully pushed out the Seleucid Empire and forged their own independent nation all over again. They proved to the world that the unyielding will of a people defending their identity can outlast the madness of well-armed kings.
So, the crucial point is this. We've just witnessed a massive pendulum swing together. We've seen empires violently rise and instantly fall to dust. We've seen profound sages seeking inner peace, devastating wars, preserving democracy, the actual birth of history writing, and the shattering of Alexander's glorious world into a million warring pieces. The Greek world is undeniably brilliant, capable of measuring the very stars themselves, but it is deeply, fatally fractured by endless infighting, which leaves us with one massive, lingering question. Who will conquer this fractured, bleeding world next? Because let me tell you, there is a very organized, very hungry new superpower rising in the West, and they are watching this divided world very, very closely.
Rome, Christianity, and the ultimate fall of an empire. We are setting the stage for a massive geopolitical shift here. I want you to imagine a sweeping cinematic landscape. You can practically hear the rhythmic thud of marching legions, right? Picture the relentless expansion of conquest and the eventual earth-shattering fracturing of the ancient world. This is history on the grandest possible scale.
So, how does an invincible empire fall? Seriously, think about that for a second. An empire spanning entire continents, with armies that absolutely crush everything in their path. That kind of collapse doesn't just happen overnight. What we're going to explore today is a slow, agonizing, and truly inevitable collision. We're talking massive empires, sweeping ideologies, and unyielding historical forces that eventually cracked the absolute foundation of the world's greatest superpower. Let's trace that extraordinary journey together.
Section 1. Rise of the Roman Juggernaut.
Okay, so the ancient globe at this point was experiencing chaotic, multi-front expansion. It was basically a crowded geopolitical chessboard. The mighty Greeks are facing imminent conquest, but out east, the Parthians are taking absolutely everything in their path, just swallowing up massive territories. Meanwhile, the Romans are aggressively pushing west, carving out their own sphere of influence. But they weren't the only apex predators in the room. They ran straight into a massive clash with the Phoenicians, who are fiercely expanding outward from Carthage. I mean, everyone is violently pushing their borders at the exact same time. It's the perfect setup for inevitable collisions.
And that multi-front chaos leads to this staggering, heart-pounding moment. Hannibal shows up in Italy. But he doesn't just march an army up a well-paved road. No, he crosses the treacherous, freezing, completely unforgiving Alps with elephants. Just imagine the sheer impossible suspense of that. The tense build-up as these monstrous war elephants crash through the Italian mountains, completely smashing the Roman forces. It was a literal nightmare scenario. An unimpossible, devastating blow striking right at the heart of the Republic when they least expected it.
But the Romans won anyway. They absorbed that crushing, unprecedented, monumental blow from Hannibal. And they just kept coming. They simply outlasted him and won. I think that really emphasizes the absolute unstoppable juggernaut nature of the Roman military machine. Absolutely nothing, not even entirely unheard of tactics like war elephants emerging from frozen mountains, could permanently halt their unyielding advance.
Section 2. Caesars, Civil Wars, and Empire.
You know, the historical trend is that once you conquer all your neighbors, you inevitably turn on yourselves, and Rome was no exception. You have these incredibly powerful leaders, Julius Caesar and Pompey. They're both fiercely conquering lands for Rome, bringing in untold wealth and unprecedented territory. But eventually they turn their swords on each other in a deadly, high-stakes civil war for total supremacy. Caesar wins, but his victory brings this unparalleled theatrical drama to the ancient world. A drama that, as we know, ends in his own bloody assassination on the Senate floor. You can almost picture it in slow motion, accompanied by a soaring, tragic choir. The greatest conqueror falling at the hands of his own peers.
Now, alongside his sprawling military conquests and that incredibly dramatic end, Caesar also left a slightly more administrative legacy. He created our calendar. But just to inject a little levity into all this heavy history, he completely botched the math. He added far too many leap years to his new system, basically leaving a messy, confusing chronological puzzle for the entire rest of the world to sort out later.
Anyway, the high theatrical drama of Rome was far from over. Soon after, yet another massive civil war erupts. It tears through the Mediterranean and ends in spectacular, cinematic tragedy when Mark Antony and Cleopatra ultimately take their own lives rather than surrender. And out of all this incredible bloodshed and chaos, a man named Augustus stepped up. He centralized the whole shebang, he consolidated absolute control, stripped away the old democratic illusions, and started ruling as the first true emperor. The Republic was officially dead. The empire had begun.
Section 3. The Spark of a Faith. Now, in a dusty remote corner of this massive empire, the tone shifts. A man named Jesus stepped forward and said he was the anointed king. Now, to the Romans, an absolute authority demanding complete and total loyalty, this was a direct challenge to their imperial power. And their response? It was quiet, swift, and brutal. The Romans crucified him. It was the standard, fatal, horrific consequence for anyone seen as a political or social threat to the strict Roman order.
But the narrative didn't end with his execution. As history records, 3 days later, his body was missing, and his followers said they saw him alive. Now, regardless of personal belief, impartially speaking, the historical ripple effect of this specific claim is just staggering to consider. It ignited a localized movement that completely refused to die with its founder, sparking an ideology that would slowly spread through the lower classes of the entire empire.
Which brings us to one of the most fascinating personal transformations on historical record. We have a man named Paul. He actually started out aggressively, literally, killing Christians. He was Paul the Persecutor, a fierce enforcer of the old order. But then he claimed he saw Jesus too. He entirely transformed into Paul the Apostle, traveling absolutely everywhere across the known world, fiercely spreading Christianity far beyond its original borders, and really planting the seeds of a global faith.
Section 4. Persecution to imperial conversion.
Let's walk through the logical cause and effect here to see exactly why the tension across the empire suddenly exploded. It was basically a rapid chain reaction. First, the Jews tried to make their own nation again, rebelling against Roman control. Second, in a devastating response to that uprising, the Romans completely outlawed the Jewish religion. Third, scared Christians, who were desperately trying to survive this massive imperial crackdown, completely stopped doing anything that looked remotely Jewish. They tried to clearly and publicly distance themselves from the rebellion just to avoid the terrifying wrath of Rome.
But distancing themselves simply wasn't enough. The Roman state turned its massive, lethal machinery directly onto this new religious group. They crucified them. They burned them alive. They fed them to lions. Visualize the heavy cinematic dread of those brutal executions for a second. The roaring, bloodthirsty crowds packed into the Colosseum. The terrifying flames lighting up the dark Roman night as human beings were used as torches. It was a brutal, systematic campaign of terror deliberately meant to erase the faith entirely from the face of the earth.
So, the crucial point here is the incredible paradox of this entire situation. The Emperor Diocletian decided to formally outlaw Christianity and kill absolutely anyone who wouldn't worship the Roman gods. He utilized the absolute lethal force of the state, but it completely failed. The relentless persecutions didn't crush the movement. Incredibly, all those public executions only made Christianity far more popular among the masses. The blood of the martyrs essentially acted as a massive, unstoppable catalyst for explosive underground growth.
And then, the script of world history completely flips. A new emperor, Constantine, takes over. And in a moment of massive, almost mythological weight, he says he's cool with Christianity. He fully embraces it. The severely persecuted underground faith suddenly becomes accepted and eventually championed by the absolute ruler of the greatest empire on earth. It's a cinematic pivot point that changes the world forever, officially merging the unbelievable power of Rome with the ideology of the Church.
Section 5. A world divided and conquered.
This right here is the beginning of the end. In a desperate attempt to manage the overwhelming chaos, the massive Roman Empire is divided strictly in half, the Great Split. You have the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern half, which, just to confuse everyone for centuries of history classes to come, we'll call the Byzantine Empire. The once unified, untouchable Roman world is officially severed in two, and it's a fracture that invites its enemies right to its doorstep.
Almost immediately, the borders begin to violently destabilize. Right on the eastern frontiers, a massive sudden power shift occurs. The Sasanians violently overthrow the Parthians in the east. It's this incredibly fast, urgent destabilization happening right next door to the newly formed Byzantine half. The entire geopolitical balance is instantly thrown into absolute chaos.
Meanwhile, in Europe, the chaos is spreading with fast, relentless energy, like war drums beating closer and closer. The Huns, a terrifying, unmatched force of nomadic warriors, are moving deep into Europe. And as they sweep through, bringing sheer terror with them, they're violently pushing Germanic tribes westward in this massive continental domino effect. Entire populations of desperate tribes are fleeing for their lives, forced straight into the rapidly crumbling borders of the Western Roman Empire.
This overwhelming pressure leads directly to rapid-fire collapse. Some of these fleeing Germans, famously known as the Vandals, literally vandalize Rome. The eternal, imperial capital itself is brutally sacked, pillaged, and stripped of its wealth. While the Vandals sweep through, leaving destruction, other invading tribes actually come to stay. They occupy the land, and they conquer the exhausted remnants of the Western Empire. Rome, as the ultimate untouchable global power, is fundamentally broken.
But I want to leave you with a final paradox to consider. Because those conquerors who stayed, they adopted the vast infrastructure, the religion, and the Roman way of life. So the thought-provoking question is, since the conquerors stayed and assimilated so deeply, is the Western Empire really dead, while its indestructible legacy transformed Europe forever? The true global disruption is happening elsewhere. Rome has been sacked, the ancient empire is collapsing, but far to the east, in the distant, unforgiving deserts of Arabia, a completely new faith is about to emerge, and it's going to change absolutely everything. Think about that for a second.
Picture this for a second. Imagine sweeping over vast, lush rainforests, wide, meandering rivers, and sprawling ancient cities, just bustling with life. Now, imagine the ultimate, living, breathing connection linking them all together. The legendary Silk Road with its vast interwoven trade routes, the echoes of empires, and the dramatic reshaping of the medieval world. We are going to trace this massive, world-altering collision of civilizations, from the deep historical roots of Asia all the way to the incredibly violent and shifting borders of Europe. Get ready, because we are about to see human history unfold on a truly epic scale. Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to hopscotch across 6 major colliding regions today. We'll start with Asian expansion and dynasties, then move south to India's transformation under Ashoka, and witness the totally seismic rise of Islam. After that, we'll shift our focus over to European defense and Viking raids, navigate the complex moral terrain of the Crusades and Holy Wars, and finally, we'll brace ourselves for the terrifying scale of the Mongol conquests and the devastating arrival of the Black Death. So, Section 1, Asian expansion and dynasties. The movement of people across this vast continent truly set the stage for everything that followed. Right off the bat, we see 2 incredibly distinct migration paths that first populated this massive region. You have the Austroasiatic peoples, the ancestors of modern Vietnamese, Cambodians, and numerous other cultures. And they migrated steadily overland from the north, navigating some really dense, difficult terrain. But in stark contrast to that, you have the Austronesian peoples. These folks were the ultimate seafarers. They completely abandoned those overland routes to literally take to the unpredictable waves, sailing directly from island to island. And you have to understand, this wasn't just a quick hop across a calm bay. Starting around modern-day Philippines and Indonesia, these early mariners accomplished an absolutely astonishing long-distance journey across open oceans. Using literally nothing but the stars, the ocean currents, and this unparalleled mastery of the sea, they expanded as far west as Madagascar, as far east as Hawaii, and eventually, they sailed all the way down to New Zealand. Honestly, it's a mind-boggling feat of human navigation that still leaves historians completely astounded today. Meanwhile, back on the mainland, we see this dizzying, rhythmic cycle of massive Chinese kingdoms. You have these sweeping eras, the Shang, the Zhou, the Qin, the Han, the Jin, and the magnificent Tang dynasties. It's like a giant historical pulse. Kingdoms would rise to immense power, completely dominate the landscape, and eventually fall. And then, they'd just be replaced by the next dynasty in a continuous loop of consolidated power, evolving culture, and technological advancement. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer political volatility of the region. China wasn't always just a single, seamlessly unified entity holding absolute control over its borders. Not at all. It constantly fluctuated. Sometimes a strong central dynasty created one unified China, sure, but in chaotic intervals, the territory completely fractured into 2, 3, or, get this, even up to 16 different Chinas existing simultaneously. To manage that extreme instability and keep those constant northern incursions at bay, they had to undertake massive generational engineering projects, namely building those sprawling protective walls. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the incredible contrast in their innovations. On the one hand, you've got these profound world-changing technologies. I mean, the invention of paper and the printing press, innovations that would literally cross the globe and reshape all of human communication and learning. But right alongside those staggering intellectual achievements, they were also the very first people in recorded history to invent and use toilet paper. You kind of have to love it. They were true pioneers in absolutely every aspect of daily life, both the profound and the wildly practical. Moving right along to Section 2, India's transformation under Ashoka. Let's shift our focus south to the wealthy, transformative empires of South Asia. Just look at the swift and massive unification here. The initial footprint of the Nanda Empire was rapidly conquered and absorbed by the expanding Maurya Empire. But the map completely changes when King Ashoka takes charge. His sweeping, aggressive military conquests massively enlarged the borders, eventually bringing almost the entire modern Indian subcontinent under one singular, incredibly powerful rule. But I want you to think about the immense psychological weight of this transformation. Ashoka started out as a notoriously brutal conqueror. He expanded his vast borders through intense bloodshed and suffering. But witnessing the sheer devastation of his own campaigns actually triggered a profound personal awakening. It is easily one of history's most powerful character arcs. He completely renounced violence, became a devoted Buddhist, and rather than sending armies to conquer his neighbors, he sent envoys and missionaries everywhere to peacefully spread the teachings of Buddhism. And because of Ashoka's influence, it paved the way for massive living connections between distinctively different civilizations. Indian teachers, scholars, and dedicated traders began moving deep into Southeast Asia, utilizing those fast oceanic and overland trade networks. Through this constant, vibrant interaction, they successfully spread Hinduism, Buddhism, and complex Indian culture far and wide. It deeply influenced the spiritual and architectural development of that entire region. All right, Section 3, the seismic rise of Islam. A dramatic and literally seismic shift is about to explode out of the Arabian Peninsula. To set the scene, for centuries, nomadic Arab clans had fought endlessly with each other. We're talking brutal, localized conflicts over extremely scarce resources. But that centuries-long internal warfare came to a sudden, absolute halt. According to the foundational texts of the faith, Muhammad received revelations from the God of Abraham. This singular event completely changed the paradigm and successfully united the formerly warring, fractured Arab tribes into a single, cohesive force under the new religion of Islam. And the explosive result of that newfound unification was completely unparalleled in history. Think about it. Because the newly united Arabs were now strictly forbidden by their faith to fight one another, all of that intense, generationally honed martial energy had to go somewhere. So it turned immediately outward. They began expanding into surrounding territories with this breathless speed, defeating massive, established empires seemingly overnight. Soon they ruled an empire that was larger, more expansive, and more diverse than any the world had ever seen up to that point. Let's move to Section 4, European defense and Viking raids, and see how this builds, because these massive external forces pushed hard into European borders. So those advancing Muslim forces sweeping up from the south, they were finally stopped by the Franks at the Battle of Tours under the fierce leadership of Charles the Hammer. Soon after that, his grandson, also named Charles, but history remembers him as Charlemagne, consolidated so much power that he was officially crowned emperor by the Pope. This pivotal alliance marked the definitive rise of the Holy Roman Empire, which, incredibly, would go on to have a staggering 1,000-year run at the center of European politics. But while the Franks were vigorously defending the south, the Vikings erupted completely unexpectedly out of the north. Utilizing these incredibly fast, shallow draft longships, they began terrifyingly swift coastal raids. But they didn't just steal everybody's stuff, they actually settled permanently. They established these far-reaching settlements in Russia, England, Normandy, Iceland, and Greenland. Some of those deeply intrepid Norse explorers even braved the icy Atlantic and became the first Europeans to set foot in North America. Which brings us to Section 5, the Crusades and Holy Wars. Returning our focus to the Middle East, we really have to prepare for the heavy moral complexity of what comes next. The immediate catalyst for this next massive global conflict was the sudden arrival of the Seljuk Turks. Coming from the Central Asian steppes, they converted to Islam and kicked off a really aggressive campaign of military expansion. As their power grew, they started conquering almost everyone in their path, pushing heavily and successfully into the long-established territories of the Christian Byzantine Empire, right up to the point of threatening their capital. Feeling the pressure, the desperate Byzantines pleaded for help from Western Europe, which leads directly to the Crusades. The Pope told European Christians they would receive absolute forgiveness for their sins if they fought a holy war to reclaim Jerusalem. This promise led to massive waves of crusaders who relentlessly plundered and killed in the name of Christian love, establishing several fragile states in the Holy Land. But the pendulum of history swung back hard. Those newly formed Crusader states were eventually outmaneuvered and conquered by the brilliant Kurdish Sultan Saladin, and later on, the powerful Mamluks. It is a multi-generational conflict defined by incredibly deep moral complexity. And now, Section 6, Mongol Conquests and Black Death. We have officially reached the climax of our explainer, and we are bringing a truly terrifying scale to the narrative here. Because just as the Middle East and Europe were locked in those holy wars, an unimaginable force was gathering in the East. Interestingly, the Mamluks in Egypt, the guys who had just solidified their control over the Holy Land after the Crusades, they were the very ones forced to face this terrifying new threat. They stood their ground at the Battle of Ain Jalut, and against literally all odds, they incredibly halted the seemingly unstoppable Mongol cavalry, permanently preventing them from expanding any further south into Africa. But how did the Mongols even get all the way over to the Middle East to begin with? I need you to just pause and process the sheer, mind-numbing magnitude of their expansion. Alexander the Great had a famously massive empire, right? Well, Genghis Khan conquered twice as much land as Alexander, leaving behind shocking, unprecedented death tolls in the millions as entire cities were just wiped from the map. And then, his descendants doubled their territory again. It was an expansion of unmatched brutality that completely overwrote the map of the known world. So the crucial point is that the impact of these sprawling empires wasn't just found in their borders. It was in the dark, unseen forces they carried with them. Those vast Mongol trade networks inadvertently brought the Black Death to Europe, and it acted as a sudden, devastating gut punch to the entire continent. The death toll was apocalyptic. At least a third of Europe perished in sheer agony. But here is the lingering question I want to leave you with today. With millions dead and these ancient empires crumbling into dust, but with the printing press freshly invented and incredible new lands being reached across the oceans, what world rises next? We're looking at a period in history defined by escalating momentum. A time when the world woke up, connected, collided, and just completely transformed. We are diving into a true global renaissance. We'll be tracing the explosive path from sudden religious reformations that completely fractured Europe all the way to the massive, bloody revolutions that literally redrew the map of the world as we know it. Just picture it for a second, the rhythmic, heartbeat-like thump of the printing press. Ink meeting moving type, pages rolling off the line, one right after another. Before this, well, information moved at an absolute crawl. It was copied painstakingly by hand by scribes in isolated rooms. But suddenly, with this mechanical marvel, ideas were completely unbound. They began spreading like wildfire across entire continents. The sheer dramatic impact of the Renaissance, honestly, it just can't be overstated. It was a total explosion of thought, permanently altering how humanity shared its most revolutionary concepts. Section 1. The Spark of Ideas, the match that lights the fire. Okay, let's dive right into this because it's absolutely fascinating to see how a single technological spark, that printing press we just talked about, managed to completely reshape global religion. Enter Martin Luther. Thanks to the printing press, you could really call him history's very first mass media influencer. I mean, he used this incredible new tool to widely broadcast his protests against the Catholic Church. And the result? Unprecedented. Suddenly, his followers didn't have to rely on anyone else. They could read the Bible directly for themselves. This totally bypassed the traditional gatekeepers, and this mass distribution of ideas directly launched what we know as the Protestant Reformation. It was a seismic event that fundamentally fractured the religious landscape of Europe and shifted the entire balance of power, basically overnight. And this brilliantly illustrates how personal desires can just rewrite national destinies. Over in England, King Henry VIII had a very specific problem. He wanted a new wife, and the Pope explicitly said no. So Henry's solution? Actually, he literally just created his own church. Almost overnight, England officially became Protestant, and this set the stage for his daughter, Queen Elizabeth, to eventually rule. And her foreign policy? Well, she absolutely loved pirates. By employing privateers, guys like Francis Drake, to constantly rob the heavily laden ships of the Spanish Empire, Elizabeth wasn't just filling up her treasury, she was engaging in a highly stealthy economic war. This incredibly strategic move began shifting global power directly away from Spain and right into the hands of the English. Section 2. Worlds collide and crumble. New coastlines in ancient empires. As European nations started looking outward, humanity entered an awe-inspiring age of exploration. Just imagine the swelling sails, the endless open oceans, and the sheer thrill of totally new coastlines suddenly appearing on the horizon. It all started as a massive, high-stakes global race to Asia to snag valuable spices. The Portuguese? They were charting this long, arduous route, sailing all the way around the Horn of Africa. But Christopher Columbus thought he had a better idea. He took a massive shortcut, sailing straight west into the unknown, fully believing he had beaten everyone to Asia. It was a monumental, exceptionally brave journey for sure, but also completely miscalculated. It actually took Amerigo Vespucci to look around a bit later and realize, wait a second, this isn't Asia. It was an entirely new landmass, and so everyone started calling it America. But of course, this landmass wasn't empty. The first Americans had actually arrived from Asia long ago, back when the oceans were much lower. And the civilizations they built over those millennia were genuinely awe-inspiring. We're talking about incredibly diverse societies spanning entire continents. Sure, they were skilled hunters, gatherers, and fishermen, but also highly advanced farmers, engineering these complex, terraced mountainsides. Way down in Peru, they constructed giant, breathtaking pyramids that easily rivaled the scale of anything in the ancient world. They built sprawling, highly complex empires, including the mighty Incas and Aztecs, whose magnificent capital cities often dwarfed the cities of Europe at the time. These were deeply religious, intricate societies. They built towering stone monuments, and, as part of their complex, intense rituals, they practiced human sacrifice to appease and feed their gods. Their engineering and cultural achievements were just monumental. Now, what's really interesting to consider is the stark, heavy contrast between these worlds. On one side, you have the sheer glory and massive scale of these ancient native empires, and on the other, the immense devastation of their collapse. When the Spanish arrived, it was a profound world-shattering collision. They conquered the Aztecs, they conquered the Incas, and they pushed outward, eventually conquering populations as far away as the Philippines. The Spanish aggressively converted these newly conquered populations to Catholicism. But the conquest also brought staggering tragedy. It unleashed devastating diseases, implemented brutal forced labor systems, and resulted in the Spanish violently extracting massive amounts of gold and silver. They loaded this immense wealth, along with completely new world-altering foods like the potato and tomato, onto ships and sent it all straight back to Europe. The complex moral weight and the absolute human cost of this era is honestly staggering to comprehend. Section 3. The Industrial Gear Shift. Steam, Speed, and Ambition. From the wide-open oceans, we now shift our focus to the factories. The rhythm of the world isn't the wind in the sails anymore. It's the heavy, ominous turning of mechanical iron gears. We're talking steam, smoke, speed, and boundless ambition. The British wanted to have a revolution of their own, but a purely industrial one. They began harnessing the relentless power of steam, which suddenly made manufacturing everything incredibly faster and dramatically cheaper. But this created a massive, immediate problem. Their small island couldn't possibly consume everything they were producing. They had an urgent, steam-powered need to sell all these newly mass-produced goods somewhere. So, to solve this overproduction crisis, Britain turned outward once again, aggressively building the massive, incredibly powerful Second British Empire. Let's move on and see how this mechanical ambition builds into an enormous, globe-spanning web of influence. Britain was rapidly expanding the map in literally every direction. They sent their criminals far across the world to establish massive penal colonies in Australia. Meanwhile, loyalists fleeing the fallout of the American colonies moved north and established the foundations of Canada. And tying all of this together, the Royal Navy. With their unquestioned, absolute control of the oceans, the British possessed the power to enforce their will everywhere. This maritime dominance was so absolute that it actually allowed them to officially outlaw the seaborne slave trade for the entire world, unilaterally enforcing this ban with their massive warships. The global map was rapidly, undeniably turning red under British influence. But it wasn't just national governments building empires, it was massive private corporations too. Over in India, the The mighty Mughal Empire, which was renowned for its unbelievable wealth and iconic, intricate architecture, was slowly fracturing and crumbling from within. And stepping directly into that immense power vacuum was the British East India Company. Just think about the audacity of that for a second. A private, profit-driven corporation operating out of London eventually took absolute military control of the entire subcontinent of India. And what did they do with that unfathomable control? Well, they needed to balance a massive trade deficit they had built up from buying tea from China. Their solution was entirely sinister. The company began systematically cultivating opium in India and smuggling it directly to drug dealers in China, forcing a catastrophic drug epidemic upon the Chinese population just to turn a profit. When the Chinese government finally pushed back, seized the drugs, and demanded they stop, the stark reality of corporate empire building was fully unmasked. The British Navy simply showed up in overwhelming force, obliterated the Chinese defenses, and took control of Hong Kong as a prize. Section 4. Revolutions and Rising Empires. The domino effect of global upheaval. We are now entering a phase of rapid-fire global upheaval. Just look at the immense, staggering scale of change happening almost simultaneously. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, you have the grand, purely cinematic arc of Napoleon Bonaparte. The guy rises from total obscurity, seizes absolute power, dramatically conquers almost the entirety of Europe with unmatched military brilliance, and then suffers a crushing, humiliating collapse, ultimately forced by Britain to retire on a remote island. Meanwhile, in the early 1800s, Simon Bolivar is leading brutal, localized struggles in revolution after revolution, sweeping across Latin America to throw off colonial rule. By the mid-1800s, the Americans are fighting an unbelievably bloody civil war, unleashing the terrible power of industrial skill slaughter upon themselves, but ultimately tearing down the institution of slavery. In the late 1800s, the map changes yet again as Italy and Germany successfully unite their fractured states into powerful, distinct, and highly ambitious nations. And perhaps most significantly, all the while, these powerful, industrialized empires are urgently and aggressively scrambling for control of Africa. They're sitting in European boardrooms arbitrarily drawing lines on a map, dividing up an entire continent and its resources. But this wasn't a quiet process. They faced fierce, determined resistance from African kingdoms who fought desperately to defend their homelands against this morally charged, overwhelming imperial expansion. So the crucial point here is that the geopolitical tectonic plates were shifting violently, creating an incredibly tight, claustrophobic world map. On one hand, you have empires that are getting terribly, massively bigger. Take Russia, for instance. They are relentlessly pushing their borders eastward across the vast expanses of Siberia and south into Central Asia, basically consuming everything in their path. On the other hand, you have crumbling ancient powers unable to keep up with industrialization, like the slowly collapsing Ottoman Empire, which was losing its grip on the Balkans and the Middle East. The vital takeaway here is that all these modern industrialized empires were aggressively expanding outward at the exact same time, but the physical globe isn't getting any bigger. They were rapidly running out of blank spaces, meaning their expanding borders were suddenly rubbing right up against each other.
Section 5. The world is a powder keg. Running out of room.
And that brings us to a deeply tense, claustrophobic realization. The blank spaces on the map are entirely gone. The great powers are pressing right up against one another. And as they run out of room, they're simultaneously experiencing a crazy, unprecedented explosion in technology. In communications, suddenly they have telegraphs and telephones, allowing orders to move at the speed of light. In transportation, the skies are suddenly filled with airships and airplanes. But most ominously, in warfare, these incredibly competitive empires are arming themselves to the teeth. They are building massive steel-hulled battleships and stealthy, deadly submarines that lurk beneath the waves. Warfare is no longer just lines of men on a field. Airplanes and submarines have suddenly turned human conflict into a terrifying, three-dimensional battle space. All of this intense global competition, this frantic race for finite resources, territory, and dominance, is taking the great powers of the world down a very, very dangerous path. Because they are locked in with nowhere left to expand, a deep, pervasive paranoia begins to set in among the nations. The terrifying logic becomes, if war is inevitable, you have to strike first, or risk being utterly destroyed by your well-armed neighbors. Humanity is basically locked onto an inevitable collision course, and honestly, the tension is palpable. We've seen how a single spark of ideas started a magnificent, transformative renaissance, but now we face a very different kind of spark. The great powers of the earth are armed to the teeth with revolutionary industrialized weapons.
They are fiercely competitive, deeply paranoid, and they are entirely out of room to grow. The entire world has become a tightly packed powder keg. So I leave you with this terrifying question. What happens when a single, unpredictable spark hits that keg? Because this path leads directly into the abyss, straight to the most catastrophic, mechanized, and deadly wars in all of human history. And that is exactly where we'll pick up next time.